The piano is no doubt one of the best musical instruments to ever be created, and today I want to talk about its history. Bartolomeo Cristofori was the proud inventor of the spinetone and the oval spinetone, which are variations of the already commonly played harpsichord, and both look very similar to that of a, yes, you guessed it, piano. But the harpsichord and the clavichord, another commonly used instrument in that time frame, was missing something. Bartolomeo heard what it was, and that would be volume, or lack thereof. When you play the harpsichord, the strings are plucked by the keys, which does not provide for all that much projection. Bartolomeo saw past the limitations of the harpsichord, and envisioned a brand new instrument that instead of plucking strings would require you to press down on keys that activated hammers to tap on metal strings every time you touch it. This instrument eventually became known as the pianoforte, or, closer to our time, the piano. Of course, I have already mentioned the fact that the harpsichord does not project all that much sound, due to the fact that you must pluck strings instead of use hammers, but it had other flaws as well. One being that notes cannot sustain for any longer than you are holding down on the note. As time progressed, this presented itself an issue. This is also a problem that the piano fixed, because the piano has something that the harpsichord does not have, and that would be the sustain pedal. The sustain pedal is located right by your feet under the piano. It is also known as the damper pedal. When you hold down the pedal, the notes that you press will sustain for a while. When you release the pedal, the note will cease to ring. There are 4 different kinds of pedals that you can find on a piano. And aside from the damper pedal, also known as the sustain pedal, there is the unicorda pedal, the half-blow pedal, and the sostenuto pedal. The sostenuto pedal is the other unique way that you can sustain a note, but is only found on a grand piano. It cannot be found, however, on the average upright piano. The sostenuto pedal replaces the unicorda on a grand piano. In this pedal, when held down, will sustain certain notes that you select before pressing on the pedal, while leaving the rest of the notes untouched. This pedal was first invented by the French, not by the Italians, and is useful in very certain situations. We have now talked about the sustain pedal and the sostenuto pedal, but there are still 2 more pedals that I mentioned that we have not yet covered. One of the pedals that I have not covered was to help with volume control. This is called the half-blow pedal, and it is located on the far left side of an upright piano. It can also be found on grand pianos. As I mentioned before, harpsichords had a hard time with volume control, and so did clavichords for that matter, and the only real difference between the harpsichord and the clavichord is the fact that the strings on the harpsichord were plucked and the strings on the clavichord were struck, and neither instrument were very loud. What the half-blow pedal does is when held down, the hammers are moved closer to the strings so that they have less distance to cover, therefore reducing the sound and projecting volume levels. This is very useful to control the volume of your instrument. For example, if you're playing piano in a band and you're not mic'd but you're still too loud, you can use this pedal to make yourself quieter. I myself have done this plenty of times while I was playing in a band, where I had to press down the half-blow pedal to make sure that I was not overpowering the rest of the instruments. Finally, we now can cover the unicorda pedal. It is very similar to the half-blow. This function is not as readily available now, but the piano's hammers used to strike 2 strings to hit 1 note. When you activate the soft function, or the unicorda pedal, the action would shift over to the right, just enough for the hammers to only hit 1 string instead of 2. This would produce a softer sound. The piano was a sort of game changer in the music industry, and it had a major impact on how music was written, and on musicians themselves. After the piano became more popular as an instrument that anyone could play, It became the go-to for musicians in terms of songwriting because on piano, you have up to 12 octaves. On a piano, you can play a piece that would usually require at least 3 different people to play. For example, in an orchestra, each group of instruments has to play a part. The violin would usually have the higher parts, the viola, the more middle ground, and the cello, the bass parts. The piano can play all 3 of those parts at one time. As I said at the beginning of this presentation, the piano is by far one of the greatest instruments to ever be created. It has volume control and the ability to play more than one melody at a time. You could try to convince me that the piano isn't one of the greatest inventions, but good luck.